Ian Barker with us. And along with us today is Carter Albrecht. Carter, can you say hello to make sure we have you?
Yeah, hello. Thanks for having me.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Carter, for coming on and taking time away. And you are coming to us from St. Paul, Minnesota, in a library. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct.
You are currently a student at Metropolitan State. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And what are you majoring in?
I'm a history major.
All right. Very good. So what are you going to do with that degree?
Hopefully keep coaching soccer.
No, that's good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And so we'll go ahead and we'll just start. So Carter's going to talk a little bit about his experiences the past 2 years and just going and observing coaches in the professional environment, right?
And I'd like to just preface this for people who are going to watch it recorded later or those of you on live. Carter is a great example of somebody that took his own initiative and then reached out to Vince and I about an article for Soccer Journal based on some experiences he'd taken his own initiative with, and we said this could be the right platform. So for all young aspiring coaches, this is the way to go. Make a little bit of extra effort on your own time and money, and then hopefully get connections like Vince and myself and other people. So Carter, welcome, and thank you, Vince, for setting it up.
No, thank you, Carter. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
I tell you, let's just start with your journey. Like, how did you you coach now? I read that on your slide deck.
Right.
But how did you get to that point?
So I played in Alabama my whole life and graduated high school a little young at 17 and moved to Germany to play. I mostly trained, a little less playing, but as I came back, I wanted to stay involved, and as I started going to school, I began coaching with high school teams and then in the club. And as I moved through some of the coaching education with United Soccer coaches, with the USSF, with the Scottish FA, we're looking at higher level stuff, and so I wanted to really become more comfortable and learn in a higher level environment. And so I started reaching out to coaches to see if I could come observe and get a feel for what they were doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we have a young man who's 11 years old on, by the way, and he says hello. His name's Alex. Yeah. He's on. Luckily, Alex is one of our faithful followers. But so, like you, I also did the same. I don't know how young you are, but when I was about 32, 32, I went to Scotland, and I visited Ross County and Aberdeen again on my own dime and time. I took my son with me. And it's an incredible experience, right? To just visit, and walk in those locker rooms and walk into the offices and sit with those people. So how did you even reach out? How did you reach out to them to let them know that you're interested?
So I, with Martin Rennie in the 11, I had just started my UEFA B license with the Scottish FA. And one of my course tutors did his pro license with Martin and mentioned that he was there. And I ended up emailing the president of the club because that's the only email I could find, asking him to pass on a message, asking if I could come observe. And Martin got back to me, I think, 30 minutes later and said, it's no problem. We can look to sort it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I have never met Martin Rennie. He's here in Indianapolis where I live, but everybody just says he's a class individual. So.
Yeah, absolutely. He went. I mean, both John and Martin really went out of their way to answer my endless questions. So.
Yeah. But I tell you what, you created a slide deck for us, so I'm going to start that. And maybe you can just take us through that, and then we can build off of this presentation. How's that?
Yeah, that's good. And please hop in at any time. It'll probably be more interesting for everyone than hearing me for the whole time.
No.
But I'm a youth coach. I coach some pretty competitive under 16 and under 17 boys club teams at St. Paul Blackhawks. Like I said, I was never a professional player, and I was looking for this experience. So last summer, I spent a Tuesday through a Saturday in Indianapolis in August. So training for 4 days, and then I went to the match. And more recently in Oklahoma City with Energy FC and John Pascarella. They played on Saturday, travel with their COVID adjusted schedule. Everything's sort of tight. And so they played Saturday, traveled Sunday back to Oklahoma City. I was there Monday, Tuesday. They played again Wednesday, and I stayed through the match. But why observing in the professional environment? Naturally, you're looking to learn from coaches who are more experienced than you, coaches who are at a different level than you. One thing for me that was really important is just being more comfortable in that environment, because as someone who didn't play fully professional, it was never really a part of my life. It was sort of ambiguous, right? You had an idea of what was going on, but it's not something I knew well.
Right.
And then understanding these processes at the professional level is going to be a lot of what I'll talk about in the next few slides. And being more able to understand those, more comfortable with that is important. And like Ian was mentioning, you go on these observation visits, your network is going to expand, and it's not linear. You go on, it's not like you're meeting one person. You meet 5, 6 people who introduce you to 5, 6 more people, and the opportunities to observe more actually present themselves. I don't know if you went in with your whole goal of expanding your network, you're probably not going to it's probably not going to be as fulfilling as you want, but it is a super positive byproduct of the experience.
Yeah. Yep.
So for me, preparing myself for an observation visit, I didn't want to just walk in, because I said I wanted to be comfortable in what they're doing and the processes. And so this took a good bit of time, but I'm watching their previous matches of Indy 11 or more recently Energy FC. I'm trying to get an idea of their system and their style. I'm looking at their upcoming fixture list, sort of what their form is. Familiarize yourself with the roster. And I'll talk about that a bit more on the next slide, but knowing who the players are is fairly important. Who's injured? It may seem, like you don't need to know that, but if there's a big 9, and he's out, let's say at Oklahoma City, you're probably going to have to change things, and that might be what they're working on that week. And then I wanted to watch the team they were playing for the weeks I was there, because they're going to talk about their opposition, and that'll put me in a better position to understand what they're working on in that week. And so I was talking to Sheila McGill, who's the University of St. Thomas women's coach in St. Paul, and she had been to observe Jill Ellis in Seattle with the women's national team, and we were talking about what we were looking to get out of the process. And she said, we really all do the same things. We just tweak it differently. And as I was driving down to Oklahoma City, nice long drive, a lot of time to think. It is important to look past the what, because at the professional level, these coaches know they don't need to reinvent the wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's probably better if you start looking at more of the context. So like in the last slide, I'm talking about how I'm trying to get that context before I go. And then now I'm looking at, okay, so in Oklahoma City, John Pascarella did a 3v3 to 2 bumpers on the end lines.
Yeah.
And there's something you'd see at my training at under 16. You might see it even at under 11. But if you start looking at the Who, they play with 2 6s and a double pivot and a 10 in front. And that's one of the 3s. And the next 3 are the ones who ended up being the reserves in that position for the game. And the 2 bumpers are center halves. And so they're looking to play through the midfield, out from the center backs, ultimately to sort of spring a fullback. There are some really talented fullbacks. But now if you start looking at the who and the what they're doing, you start seeing the layers of thought in that process. And it's the same with the when. They played a game on Monday. It's about 15, 20 minutes long, but they're not playing to play. It's part of a tactical and physical periodization. And so on Monday, they're playing this game, but it's a smaller space overloaded with numbers because they're trying to get a certain physical load out of it.
Yep.
And it's with the where things are put in certain parts of the pitch. You're not playing a rondo inside the 6-yard box, right? It's all trying to be as game realistic as possible. The why, we're looking again at physical load and we're, why they're doing certain things. It might be a correction in their system from a previous game, or it might be something they're trying to really fine tune. And then how they do it is really important to me, because how I coach under 17 players isn't going to be how a professional coach coaches professionals, right? Especially the assistant at Oklahoma City Energy. He's mid-30s, the same age as some of the players, and so the tone you take, right? How you communicate, what they let slide when they're stopping in to make a correction. That's really important. And so for me, it's you don't get caught up on the what, because we've with all the resources available online with you guys and different like Academy Soccer Coach, we've seen almost every activity or drill out there at some level or another. But if you're looking at the incredible layer of thought that goes into it, that's where I think you can really bring it back. I saw a question popped up, and on the next slide, I'll get to that. So, but yeah, if you're understanding this process, right, and that these variables aren't independent, they're all interconnected in deciding how they're going to continue to move forward, and that's the sort of the full immersion.
So Carter, I'm going to interrupt briefly.
Yeah, of course.
Ian from Bainbridge Island off Seattle is originally the technical director for Coon Rapids Soccer Club. So
really?
Minnesota connection. And I think his question is excellent about the transfer to youth coaching, and you've already begun to touch on it. So I'll let you get there when you're ready. But I just wanted to say a couple of things and give you, Coach Rennie and Coach Pascarella, fantastic to give a young coach like you access. But the fact that you went and revised or reviewed what the roster was, and so you kind of knew the playing staff, and the fact that you participated in being aware of what their opposition was going to be and how they might set up for it, is the kind of forethought and attention to detail that should be in every level of coaching, but speaks volumes to you. So I just want to give you a little pat on the back for that one.
Thanks. I think it's important to go in with that full immersion, because then you're having the context and you're striving to understand the layers of thought in what they're doing. And that's when you're not going to be bringing back what you have in the pro environment and copying it with under 17 boys. But if you understand the thought processes that they're going through and how complex they are, then you're going to be able to start making some of these same decisions at the youth level, right? You're going to be able to think, who am I putting in? If it's youth soccer, and so Sometimes we're looking at 4 matches in a week or 3 or 4. And so what's the physical load I'm putting on the players? Where on the pitch am I going to be able to do these things? And so for me, that's the, I'm getting more comfortable in the environment, but most importantly, I'm understanding what they're doing with their thought processes. And if I can understand what they're doing to solve a certain problem, I can look at my problem, although it's unique to what they're looking at, and apply those same processes to understand it. But I saw Ian from Seattle had said what was difficult. Well, you're gonna, it's the stuff, it's field space, equipment, right? If you're talking about physical load, I don't have access to GPS monitors. And so when I'm planning a physical load, it's less scientifically driven and more what the players are giving me, like an anecdotal feedback about how their body feels. And so that's those sort of things and sort of like resources, that's difficult to bring back. But if you go into the professional environment, have the context of what they're doing and really understand their thought processes and how they make them, that's the part that you can bring back rather easily, because now you're learning how we should view certain issues or problems or microcycles and all of the interdependent thought that goes into making those decisions. But the last slide, just to review, for me, prepare to fully immerse yourself to get out the most out of your visit. Have that context. Because you'll want to take notes and ask questions. And if I'm asking John, why did that player do this with this player? It's too ambiguous for him to give me a real answer. But if I know who the players are and what positions they're in, then I'm able to understand. I'm able to ask, when do you want Zach to make that overlapping run? And what's the cue? Now he knows exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm going to understand it better for myself. Write your questions down, because you'll have 1,000 things racing through your mind when he comes. And the coach will come talk to you. They're not going to open their doors to you and then sit you on the side and ignore you. So when they come over there, ask those questions that you had written down. And take notes, because something you might realize you didn't have a question until the next day, right? Or until after you've left. And I've sent John an email since then asking him about something. And then remember, you're a guest. It seems like it should be obvious, but coaches opening up their doors, and it's very kind of them and generous of them. And I'd of course want a coach to have an experience with me to where he's willing to do this with another coach. I don't want to be a reason a coach says it's just too much of a pain to let someone in to observe. And so remember, you're a guest, and be polite, and then that openness will be passed on to the wider coaching community.
Fantastic.
That's incredibly thoughtful of you, not only to be a guest for your best interest, to get the most out of it for yourself, but to not ruin the opportunity for somebody else. That's very profound. So there's nothing about this which isn't impressing me. So I assume now, if you can graduate through good youth, possibly some college, possibly some semi-pro, and get to the kind of levels that you're looking at, even though you're quite a young coach, this is the type of thing that you'd be willing to do for a couple of aspiring people down the line, right? And be able to pay it back.
Yeah, of course. And that's the first thing John Pasquarello said when he called me, was I had gotten his email. He said, how'd you get my email? And I said, I found your media guy's email, and it was first name dot last name at energyfc. I mean, he might be getting a lot of emails now, but I figured out the email format, and I said, well, this is probably John Pasquarello's too. So I just guessed it and sent it. And he said that was how I got my start coaching past the college level, was guessing MLS teams' email addresses and sending it out. and letting me come in. And he ended up at Sporting Kansas City with Peter Vermes winning an MLS Cup. And so for him, it was really important, as he said, to pay it forward. And so, yeah, of course, I think, there's no doubt in my mind I'd have people come observe. And I think with like the open training week program you're doing, I think hopefully it'll start to be more commonplace and less restricted.
So it's fantastic that in our generation, coaches like myself and Vince, but somebody like John is willing to do this, because hopefully it spawns more of the next generation of coaches that will create these opportunities. And I know John very, very well from his days here at Sporting and then at the Des Moines Menace. And then back when he was a coach at Maryland and Penn State. I think he played at Penn State. And what an absolute gentleman. So the opportunity he gave you is only going to make the coaching fraternity stronger down the line. So that's great.
Right, I agree. And just looking at it at the whole level, the more better stronger coaches we have, the better off all of us are going to be.
So we'll wrap up with two questions, one from Vince, but we'll step in with Ian again from Seattle. What's the next couple of years look like for you based on your academic schedule, your coaching?
So I'm going to graduate with my undergraduate degree pretty soon, here in the next year. It's been a long time coming. But so I'm finishing up my UEFA B license. There's been about a 4-month delay with COVID, but it looks like we're going to all be waivered on to be able to take the A without the 12-month sort of learning period. And so hopefully that's next. I did my premier diploma with you guys before in terms of coaching education, and then start looking at some of your other courses. And once I graduate, then I'll probably start looking for jobs in colleges, junior colleges. I've got some connections in the Caribbean and in West Africa, and so sort of looking at maybe coaching and there's the semi-pro environments that are there. But I mean, for me, the next step is still a lot more learning, but hopefully doing more observation visits. I'd love to do one every summer. I mean, that'd be great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic that you chose like the USL and that route, as opposed to like going all the way up to the MLS or like my first experience. I went to Scotland and I visited Ross County, which at the time was not in the top division. It was in the second division. And the reason why I went there is because I heard that they were really good at developing players, right? And at the time I was a director of coaching for a club and I was a high school teacher and coach and thought, you know what, maybe this is the route I need to go and I can get in.
That's the Highland Football Academy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And then I went to Aberdeen and I've never been so cold in my entire life. Aberdeen. I mean, ever. But question for you. And then I was very fortunate to go to Newcastle. And I'm actually looking at my journal from all those trips right now. So I've got 3 international trips. And one I wrote, Alan Shearer, first player to training, last player to leave. And then he actually came back with a bag of balls, spread them out, and then hit free kicks. Kieran Dyer, last player into training, first to leave.
Right.
Did you see any professional players, you don't have to name them, kind of in that mindset, like you're like, wow, this is why they're that good?
Yeah. There were a couple of players who were straight out of college, and they're young, fighting for a spot on the team.
Yep.
And they were the first ones out there knocking the ball around. And they were there. I mean, I was there probably an hour after training each day because talking to John or waiting to talk to a different coach, and they left after I did. And there were some of the professionals who might not have played at the MLS level. There's a guy named Jaime Chavez. He's the big number 9 for Energy. And he's 33. He's never played in the MLS. He's spent a lot of time in the 4th division and what was PDL. And you can tell he's the consummate professional.
Yeah.
And just how he approaches training. He's one of the oldest guys on the team. And when it's time for the water break and the trainer is carrying the water, Jaime's goes and grabs one of the cases and gives it out to his teammate. And then there was the opposite that I was talking to John about. Player at, like you were saying, player who had played in the MLS, in MLS Academy, and they're doing core work, and every time the coach turned around, he stopped. And it sort of shows in his fitness.
Yeah, no, it does. It catches up. And it was really eye-opening for me because, here's Alan Shearer, he was just beyond his peak and, and with Newcastle. And yet he was still, training ended, right? And they all left. But he came out with a bag of balls and just spread them out and just started whipping free kicks just on his own. And I remember just walking by him and he just kind of nodded to us and said hello. And then he just went about his day. But, but you're like, well, that's why he's great, right? He just cares. And the other individual I named earlier, unfortunately, he never met his work, right? He just didn't. But anyway, no, thank you so much for your time. It's been really good. Really enjoyed this conversation and your presentation. It was very, very detailed, but you're very observant and you're very, just your eye to things, right? And just looking for those things is great, fantastic. So,
well, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us. Vince and I get an afternoon off tomorrow, and we're back with Jeff Van Duzen on Thursday at 3 p.m. Central to talk about the digital convention. And then we'll have Ian Mulliner and Stephanie and a few people on Friday for kind of a slightly irreverent 3 p.m. show. And then this recording will go up on YouTube. So those of you that have been with us, please share it with some of the other young coaches in your club. This is a story that more young coaches need to hear.
Excellent.
Great job, Carter.
Carter, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks. Bye-bye.